The Forgotten Archives. The crystal hummed with ancient energy as Archon Thane Veltar held it up to the pale light of Nexus Station's archives. His forearms trembled slightly, not from age, though his 800 years showed in every weathered scale, but from the weight of what he had discovered. For 3 centuries he had collected these warning crystals from dead worlds across the galaxy, each one telling the same impossible story. The Silence Keepers had tried to warn them all. Thane's species, the Crithari, were known throughout the galaxy as master historians. Their memory crystals could store information for millions of years, and their scholars were respected across 1,000 worlds. But this discovery challenged everything the Galactic Federation believed about their past. The crystal in his hands was the 47th he had found, this one recovered from the ruins of Kepler 442b, a world that had been dead for over 10,000 years. Like all the others, it contained the same message, recorded in the universal language of mathematics and physics, that any advanced species could understand. They come from the blue world, the message always began. The ones who turn everything, they touch into weapons, the ones who never surrender. When they reach the stars, the galaxy will remember why we tried to warn you. Thane activated his personal communicator, connecting to the Federation Council chambers on the capital world of Centauri Prime. The holographic display showed Council Speaker Jackson, a tall Viridian with silver skin that seemed to glow in the chamber's artificial light. Archon Veltar, Jackson said with barely concealed irritation. I trust this interruption concerns a matter of galactic importance. Speaker Jackson, I have made a discovery that could change everything we know about our galaxy's history. The Silence Keepers left warnings, hundreds of them, about a species from what they called the Blue World. Jackson's expression didn't change. The Viridians had ruled the Federation for over 5,000 years, and they had little patience for what they saw as archaeological fantasies. Archon, we have discussed your theories about the Silence Keepers before. There is no evidence they ever existed outside of these crystals you claim to have found. That's just it, Thane said, his excitement making his voice crack. I've found crystal warnings on 47 different worlds, all dead for thousands of years. Worlds that never had contact with each other. The mathematics alone prove that this isn't coincidence. Ancient civilizations often had similar myths, Jackson replied dismissively. Fear of the unknown is universal. Now, if you'll excuse me, we have more pressing matters to discuss. The connection ended, leaving Thane alone with his crystals, and his growing certainty that the galaxy was making a terrible mistake. He looked at his collection of warning crystals, each one from a different dead world, each one telling the same story. The Silence Keepers had seen something in their future, or perhaps their past, that had terrified them enough to scatter warnings across the galaxy. 3 weeks later, everything changed. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the exploration vessel Wanderer, watching the stars wheel past through the main view screen. Humanity had only achieved faster than light travel 18 months ago, and this was their furthest journey from Earth yet. The small crew of 4 was humanity's first attempt at deep space exploration. Picking up something on long-range sensors, called out pilot Jackson Torres from his station. At 28, Jackson was the youngest member of the crew, but his reflexes were the best humanity had ever tested. Looks like artificial constructs, could be space stations or ships. Dr. Elena Vasquez looked up from her xenobiology research station. This is it, she said, barely containing her excitement. First contact with an alien civilization. Engineer Marcus Reed, a practical man in his 50s who had spent 30 years building the technology that got them here, was less optimistic. Or first contact with something that wants to blow us out of space. Sarah, we should be careful. Sarah nodded. She had commanded military vessels before joining the Exploration Corps, and she understood the dangers they might face. Jackson, take us to yellow alert, but keep our weapons powered down. Elena, start recording everything. Marcus, I want our engines ready for emergency jump if things go wrong. The alien ships were sleek and beautiful, their hulls covered in patterns that seemed to shift and change in the starlight. There were 5 of them, each twice the size of human vessels. arranged in a perfect geometric formation that spoke of military discipline. "They're scanning us," Elena reported. "Very sophisticated sensors, much more advanced than ours." The communication system activated, and a voice filled the bridge. The translation came through clearly, though the alien language was unlike anything they had ever heard. "Unknown vessel, you have entered the territory of the Viridian Federation. Identify yourself and state your purpose." Sarah took a deep breath. This moment would be remembered in human history forever. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth vessel Wanderer. We are explorers from the planet Earth, seeking peaceful contact with other intelligent species." There was a long pause. When the alien voice returned, it carried a different tone, suspicion mixed with something that might have been fear. "Earth? We have no record of this world in our databases. You will prepare to be boarded for inspection." Marcus leaned over to Sarah's station and whispered urgently, "Captain, their weapons are powering up. We need to make a decision." Sarah had commanded enough military operations to recognize a trap when she saw one. The alien ships had moved to surround them while they talked, cutting off escape routes. Their inspection would likely end with humanity's first ambassadors dead or imprisoned. "Jackson," she said quietly, "plot a random jump course. Maximum distance." "But Captain," Elena protested, "this is first contact. We can't run away." "We're not running," Sarah replied. "We're surviving, and we're making sure Earth knows what's out here." The lead alien ship moved closer, extending what looked like a docking tube toward the Wanderer. At the same moment, Sarah gave the order that would change galactic history. "Jump!" The Wanderer vanished in a flash of twisted space-time, leaving the Viridian patrol staring at empty space. Fleet Commander HFY of the Viridian Navy had been patrolling the outer territories for 40 years. In all that time, he had never encountered a species that simply vanished when faced with superior force. Most primitive civilizations either surrendered immediately or tried to fight with predictably disastrous results. These humans had done neither. "Analysis," he ordered his science officer. "Their jump was random, sir, no pattern we can trace. But more importantly, their ship's design is completely unknown. The materials, the energy signatures, even their method of faster-than-light travel is different from anything in our databases. A previously unknown species with independent FTL development," HFY mused. "How is that possible? Our surveys covered this entire sector." "Sir," his communications officer interrupted, "I'm detecting additional ships, human ships. They're appearing throughout the system. On the main screen, dozens of human vessels dropped out of faster-than-light speed. They were smaller than Viridian ships, but there were many of them, and they moved with a coordination that spoke of military training." "Impossible," HFY breathed. "How did they mobilize so quickly?" The answer came from his tactical officer. "Sir, these aren't rescue ships. Look at their configuration. They're built for one purpose, ramming attacks." Before HFY could respond, the human ships accelerated to attack speed, but instead of targeting the Viridian vessels directly, they did something unexpected. The human ships scattered in all directions, moving too fast to track effectively, broadcasting what appeared to be sensor data about Viridian ship capabilities and locations. "They're not trying to fight us," his tactical officer realized with growing alarm. "They're gathering intelligence. All ships open fire," HFY ordered. The Viridian ships unleashed their energy weapons, but the human vessels were already gone, jumping away with the same random patterns that made them impossible to track. Within minutes, the system was empty except for the Viridian patrol, but the damage was done. The humans now knew exactly what they were facing. 3 months later, Archon Thane Veltar stood before an emergency session of the Galactic Federation Council. The chamber was filled with representatives from hundreds of worlds, all talking at once about the human situation that had developed throughout Federation space. "Order," Speaker Jackson called, his silver skin now showing stress patterns that made him appear almost transparent. "Archon Veltar has requested permission to address the council about these humans." Thane activated his holographic display, showing images of the warning crystals he had collected. "Honored representatives, 3 months ago you dismissed my warnings about the Silence Keepers. Today, we face exactly the threat they tried to warn us about. The chamber fell silent as Thane continued. The humans come from a blue world in the outer rim. They adapt to any threat. They turn everything around them into weapons, and they never ever surrender. Preposterous, interrupted Council Member Vextar from the warlike Krylon species. These humans have primitive technology. Our patrol ships report their vessels are centuries behind our capabilities. Yes, Thane agreed. But in 3 months, they have reverse-engineered our scanning technology, developed countermeasures to our weapons, and established colonies on 17 different worlds that we didn't even know they could reach. The chamber erupted in concerned voices. Reports had been flooding in from across Federation space about human settlements appearing overnight, human ships using modified Federation technology, and human colonies that seemed to spring up wherever the Federation showed weakness. Most disturbing of all, Thane continued, raising his voice over the noise, they have done something we thought impossible. They have united their entire species for a single purpose. Every human ship, every human colony, every human action is coordinated toward one goal: survival against a threat they perceive as existential. Speaker Jaxhun's stress patterns had spread across his entire body, making him look like living quicksilver. What are you suggesting, Archon? Thane held up the crystal that had started his research 3 centuries ago. I'm suggesting that the Silence Keepers knew exactly what would happen if we ignored their warnings. The humans aren't just another species seeking territory or resources. They're survivors, and they've identified us as a threat to their survival. He paused, looking around the chamber at representatives from species that had ruled the galaxy for millennia. And if the ancient warnings are true, we have awakened something that will not stop until either we are gone, or they are. The chamber fell silent as the weight of Thane's words settled over the assembled delegates. In the quiet, they could all hear the distant hum of the station's defensive systems, recently upgraded in response to increased human activity in the sector. Outside the great windows of the council chamber, stars that had looked the same for thousands of years now seemed different. Somewhere among them, humanity was adapting, planning, and preparing for whatever came next. The Silence Keepers had tried to warn them. Now it was too late. The awakening storm 6 months after the emergency council session, Speaker Jaxhun stood in the Federation's most secure war room, staring at a holographic display that showed the current state of galactic territories. Red markers indicated human colonies, and there were far too many of them. How many now? He asked Fleet Admiral Corex, the Federation's highest military commander. 237 confirmed human settlements, Corex replied, his insectoid features showing the strain of constant warfare. But our intelligence suggests there are many more we haven't found yet. The door to the war room opened, and Archon Thane Veltar entered, looking older than his 800 years. In his arms, he carried a crystal unlike any he had shown before. This one was larger, darker, and seemed to pulse with its own internal light. Speaker Jaxhun, Thane said, his voice heavy with exhaustion. I've made another discovery, one that changes everything. Jaxhun turned from the display, his silver skin now permanently marked with stress patterns. More warnings from your Silence Keepers? Not warnings, Thane said, placing the dark crystal on the central table. A confession. The crystal activated automatically, projecting a hologram of a figure that made everyone in the room step backward in shock. The figure was clearly human, but wearing technology that was impossibly advanced. Technology that made Federation science look primitive. The human figure spoke in perfect galactic standard, without any translation device. I am Commander Sarah Chen of the Terran Temporal Corps, recording this message in the year 4847 of the human calendar. If you are seeing this, then you have found one of our warning crystals, and the cycle is beginning again. Jaxhun felt his heart stop beating. That's impossible. The human we encountered was named Sarah Chen, but she was a primitive explorer. The hologram continued. By the time you see this message, my past self will have made first contact with your Federation. The events that follow are not inevitable, but they are probable. Humanity will be seen as a threat. The Federation will attempt to contain or destroy us. And in defending ourselves, we will become the very thing you feared. Admiral Korek studied the hologram with professional interest. Advanced technology, temporal manipulation capability, and she's speaking our language without translation. How is this possible? Thane activated more controls on the crystal, and additional information began flowing across the display. According to this, the Silence Keepers weren't an ancient alien civilization. They were humans from the future. Humans who had mastered time itself and were trying to prevent a galactic war that had already happened. The hologram of future Sarah Chen continued her message. We call ourselves the Silence Keepers because we learned the hard way that sometimes the greatest kindness is to remain silent. But we couldn't stay silent about this. The war that's coming will consume thousands of worlds and billions of lives. We scattered these warnings hoping someone, somewhere would listen. The temporal paradox implications are staggering, whispered Dr. Yenth, the Federation's chief scientist. If they're from the future, why can't they simply prevent the war directly? The hologram seemed to respond to his question. Direct temporal intervention creates paradoxes that could unravel reality itself. We can only leave warnings and hope that different choices will be made. But I fear that the fundamental nature of both humanity and the Federation makes this conflict inevitable. Jackson found his voice. What fundamental nature? Humanity survives by adapting to threats and eliminating them. The Federation maintains order by controlling potential threats before they become dangerous. When an unstoppable force meets an immovable object, both must change or both will be destroyed. The hologram flickered and changed, showing scenes of devastation across the galaxy. Worlds burning, fleets engaged in massive battles, entire species fleeing their homeworlds. This is what happens if the current path continues, future Sarah Chen said. Humanity develops technologies that make Federation science obsolete. The Federation escalates their response. Both sides become locked in a cycle of mutual destruction that spreads across the galaxy. How do we stop it? Thane asked the hologram, though he knew it was just a recording. The war begins when the Federation decides that humanity must be contained. Everything after that is reaction and counter-reaction. The only way to prevent it is to choose cooperation over control. The hologram began to fade, but not before delivering one final message. Remember, the humans you see today are not the humans we became. They are still explorers, still hoping for peaceful contact. But if you force them to become warriors, they will become the greatest warriors the galaxy has ever seen. The crystal went dark, leaving the war room in heavy silence. Admiral Korex was the first to speak. Temporal manipulation, advanced technology, strategic thinking that outmaneuvered our best fleets. If this recording is genuine, we're not facing a primitive species. We're facing our own future conquerors. Or, Thane said quietly, we're facing the species we're going to force them to become. Before anyone could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the facility. A communications officer rushed into the war room, his face pale with panic. Speaker, Jackson, we're receiving reports from across the Federation. Human fleets are appearing simultaneously in every major system. Not attacking, just appearing. Jackson rushed to the communication console. Show me. The main display lit up with feeds from dozens of different worlds. In each system, human fleets had appeared as if from nowhere. Not the small exploration vessels they had encountered before, but massive fleets of ships using technology that looked disturbingly familiar. Those are Federation designs, Admiral, Korex breathed, but modified, improved. The communication system activated and a voice filled the war room. It was Captain Sarah Chen, not the future version from the crystal, but the present-day explorer they had first encountered. Speaker Jax Hun of the Viridian Federation, this is Captain Sarah Chen representing the Terran Alliance. We need to talk. Jax Hun activated the response channel with trembling hands. Captain Chen, your fleets have appeared in Federation space without authorization. This is an act of war. No, Sarah replied, and her voice carried a weariness that seemed impossible for someone so young. This is an act of survival. Your fleets have been moving toward our colonies for 3 days. Our defensive systems indicate you're preparing for simultaneous strikes against every human settlement. Admiral Corex looked shocked. How could they know about Operation Containment? Those plans were classified at the highest levels. Sarah's voice continued. We know because we've learned to think like you. When you have superior technology and greater numbers, the logical, tactical approach is to eliminate a potential threat before it becomes an actual threat. We would do the same thing in your position. Then why haven't you attacked? Jackson asked. There was a long pause before Sarah answered. Because we've seen what happens if we do. We found the warning crystals too. Speaker Jackson. The silence. Keepers left them for us as well as for you. We know what we become if this escalates. On the display, new information began appearing. Technical specifications for human ships, population data for human colonies, resource allocation charts. The humans were sharing their military intelligence voluntarily. This is everything, Sarah said. Our ship designs, our colony locations, our population numbers, our resource capabilities. We're giving you complete information about our civilization. Why? Thane asked, though he wasn't sure if the communication was still open. Because, Sarah replied, apparently hearing him. Trust has to start somewhere. The Silence Keepers, our future selves, told us that this war begins with fear and ignorance. So we're choosing to eliminate both. Dr. Yenth studied the incoming data with growing amazement. Their technology isn't just modified Federation designs, it's completely redesigned from the ground up. More efficient, more powerful, more adaptable. How did they advance so quickly? Because, Sarah said, when you face extinction, you learn fast. Every human colony has been working on the same problems. Every human ship shares its discoveries instantly with every other human ship. Our entire species has been focused on one goal: survival. And we've learned that survival means understanding our threats completely. The data stream continued, showing human innovations that solved problems the Federation had struggled with for centuries. Faster than light communication, energy efficiency, improvements, defensive systems that could adapt to any weapon. You've created something remarkable, Jackson admitted reluctantly. A species-wide cooperation unlike anything we've seen. We've created what we had to create, Sarah replied. The question now is, what do we create together? Admiral Corex stepped forward. Captain Chen, your species has demonstrated capabilities that exceed our own in several areas. Why should we trust that you won't use those capabilities against us? Because we've seen the future where we do, Sarah answered simply. And nobody wins that war. The Silence Keepers showed us a galaxy where both our species become so focused on destroying each other that we destroy everything else as well. The displays around the war room showed the scope of what humanity had accomplished in just months. Colonies that were self-sufficient, ships that could repair themselves, communication networks that spanned the galaxy. But instead of using these advantages to conquer, they were offering to share. What are you proposing? Jackson asked. A new kind of alliance, Sarah said. Not the Federation's model of central control, and not humanity's model of independent cooperation. Something that combines the best of both. The Federation's experience and stability, with humanity's adaptability and innovation. Thane looked at the now dark crystal that had started this revelation. The Silence Keepers said the cycle could be broken. This might be how. Admiral Corex was studying the human fleet positions on his tactical display. They could have struck first. With their current positions and technology, they could have crippled our response capabilities before we knew what was happening. But they didn't, Jackson realized. They chose to talk instead. Because, Sarah's voice came through the speakers one more time, we learned something important from our future selves. Being the strongest doesn't make you the winner. Being the wisest does. Outside the war room's windows, human ships maintained their positions throughout Federation space. Not attacking, not threatening, but undeniably present. A reminder that the age of Federation dominance was over, and the age of cooperation had begun. The choice was no longer whether humanity would survive their first contact with galactic civilization. The choice was what kind of galaxy they would all create together. In his hands, Thane held the crystal that had warned of humanity's potential for destruction. But looking at the data streaming from human ships, he saw something the Silence Keepers might not have expected. Humanity's even greater potential for creation. The legends about humans had been true, but they were not the legends anyone had expected.